Journey to Arunachala, Journey to Myself. A.C.W. My visiting India and the discovery of the Maharshi are one and the same. Events throughout my life, seemingly haphazard at the time and occasionally unwanted, have been beautifully arranged so that I could follow a spiritual inquiry that would eventually prepare me for and lead me to Arunachala. My husband and I set out for India several years ago. We had settled in a European university town after a few years working in Asia. Although I had used my vacations to travel widely while in Asia, I had never visited India. My husband had been here once for a couple of months and had left feeling that he would one day return. On arriving in India, we visited some Buddhist pilgrim sites, attending a 3-week intensive meditation retreat that was held in silence. On the way, we shared an astonishingly crowded train with a vivacious Hungarian woman who spoke abstractedly about a holy hill somewhere in South India. It sounded remote, exotic, and wild, and had an unpronounceable name. Some weeks later, we traveled south. I thought I had arrived in paradise. That was the beginning of my love affair with Tamil Nadu. The further we traveled into the state, the more at home I felt. I was moved and awed by the majesty of the great temples, captivated by the color and vibrancy of street life, and delighted by the green paddy fields dotted with graceful palm trees. Most striking of all, a sense of sacred permeated everyday life. Even the diet suited me. In Madras, we discovered that Tiruvannamalai did indeed exist and could be reached by bus. When we pulled into the town, all the other passengers got out, and we thought we should do the same, but the driver mentioned for us to stay. He then drove the empty bus to the ashram. We were so green. We did not know that this was the ashram of Sri Ramana Maharshi, whose books we had been reading at home, nor did we have much idea of what ashram meant. Knowing that some temples do not permit entry to non-Hindus, we were nervous that our presence might cause offense. We entered the grounds rather timidly, and like so many thousands before, I was deeply struck by the sense of profound peace and sanctity. Inadvertently, we had arrived on the day of a major festival, so the ashram was full. A man who had been observing us stepped forward and very sweetly guided us to the Samadhi hall and the old hall. He was extremely kind and unassuming, and gently spoke a few words about the essence of Bhagavan's teaching, of presence, and the beauty of a leaf as it catches the light of the sun. The bare simplicity of what and how he spoke struck deep within, and there was a thrill of recognition, heart speaking to heart. We found accommodation on a local roof in full view of Arunachala and discovered that we had arrived on Sivaratri. My notion of Shiva was somewhat hazy. Later, I understood what a blessing it was to come to feet of Arunachala Shiva on such an auspicious day. The potency and intensity of the atmosphere was such that I would automatically and frequently be falling into meditation. Most days, we spent hours at the temple, finding quiet spots to sit, overcome by stillness despite the crowds of devotees and boisterous festival activities. An Englishman staying at the same house as us, and a devotee for 20 years, plugged some of the gaps of our ignorance, explaining the significance of the place we had come to, Shivaratri and Giri Pradakshina. We left Tiruvannamalai on a handsome steam train bound for Madurai. As the train wound its way sedately across the sacred land, I knew I had found something exquisite and precious. I also recognized that a deep an unshakable love for this country had taken root. Our next connection with the Maharshi came a year or so later. Our odyssey through India and her sacred traditions continued. During a stay in an ashram near Tiruchi, a woman approached us and handing over a slim book said, "I think you might be interested in this." It was called The Secret of Arunachala. Did she know that in 2 days we were due to leave for our second trip to Arunachala? Fascinated, we read the story of Swami Abhikshitananda, the Belgian monk. Although a devout Catholic, he had become more and more attracted to the Maharshi and stayed frequently on the hill. The days and hours leading up to our meeting with Sri Punjaji were marked by great anticipation, excitement, and emotion. This flowed over when I was in the room sitting in front of a large exquisite portrait of Bhagavan. A cassette of Aksharamanamale was playing in an otherwise silent room. As I gazed at the picture, I knew quite simply that there was ultimate truth, ultimate love, and ultimate beauty. The final link in the chain had been provided, and since then, we have been moved and blessed to visit Tiruvannamalai again and again. Each visit has been longer and more engaging. Slowly, we have explored the hill, the temple, the Pradakshina route, the ashram environment, the literature on Bhagavan, and become familiar with the rituals and pujas. Throughout all these, the silence resounds, connects, unites. Bhagavan's analogy of the Shruti note that is constant and ever present has come to have more and more meaning in my life. Returning to Arunachala after a period away is a joy beyond expression. Sometimes I ask, what is my favorite thing about being here? There is such a rightness about everything here, whether it is unhurried but dedicated performance of the pujas throughout the day, the care extended to plant and animal life, or the sattvic food served so punctually in Bhagavan's smooth-flowed dining hall. One of the greatest aspects of the ashram is the utter freedom visitors are given. If you like chanting and singing bhajans, you may do so. If you want to sit silently in the meditation hall all day, you may. If you prefer to sit in the library poring over Bhagavan's literature, nobody will stop you. And if you wish to get up at odd hours of the night to walk around the hill, well, go ahead. The other day, I was talking to an elderly man from Delhi on a 2-month tour of ashrams and pilgrim sites in the south. I asked him how he was enjoying his stay in the ashram. "Oh, very much," he replied. "I have enjoyed all places, but here is the best. Here, they leave you alone." This sums up the unique quality of Ramanashramam and is also a beautiful example of Bhagavan's approach in action. Each person is given all necessary space and support to find their own path and to conduct their own inquiry. In this way, a kind of spiritual maturity is fostered and responsibility for one's own sadhana. When I am physically away from Arunachala, my thoughts are focused on it much more often. For example, after my last visit, for months I would look at my watch around 6:45 every morning and think, milk offering time. On waking, I would immediately think of Bhagavan and a mental image might accompany the thought. I would feel the hours and days guided and blessed by His grace and presence in numerous and unexpected ways. I not only feel extraordinarily lucky to have come across this ultimate teacher and teaching. Though Bhagavan constantly reminds us to go beyond form, I find that in coming to the ashram, there is a sense of coming to the very heart of Him. Every moment that is passed in this awareness, every step trodden on the holy ground, brings inspiration and an opportunity to awaken. Om Shri Ramanarpanamastu. What is the use of knowing everything except the self? What else is there to know? For anyone oneself, itself is known. On realizing in oneself the self, which is the only self-effulgent one, in myriad of selves, the light of self will clearly shine within. This is indeed the true display of grace, the ego's death, and the unfolding of the bliss supreme. Bhagavan Sri Ramana.